Awesome. Thanks so much for the kind introduction. It is great to be out of cold and rainy New York and here in Miami. Pumped to see all of you, and I think we have a great, timely panel ahead of us. So I view my job as a moderator to largely sit here and shut up and let people smarter than me tell you what you actually want to hear. So with that said, a brief little overview. Even though headlines, including sometimes my own, would have you think that institutions are taking over crypto, and they are to an extent, right? I mean, from TradFi to crypto-native institutions getting like ridiculously high valuations. I mean, TradFi is coming for Bitcoin, right? And a lot of the people on this stage speak to that. But it's also kind of up to institutions to guide the next wave outside of longtime Bitcoiners and Bitcoin maxis like yourselves, into Bitcoin, into the asset class. So with that being said, just a kind of a general question to start, but we're at sort of an inflection point for Bitcoin. This is the biggest Bitcoin conference ever, right? It's amazing.
Woo.
How do we onboard the next 100 million, 200 million, 1 billion? What has worked in the past from your perspectives, and where do we need to go, and how do we get there?
I'll jump in. I think some important stuff here is, this right now what we're doing, bringing people together. We've got probably close to 50,000 people coming together and actually saying, hey, look, this is here to stay. This is now going to get adopted at that professional level. We see things like the executive order coming out and stuff. That's legitimizing it. It's saying that this digital asset, this change is happening. And I think what we're going to see too is better clarification amongst the regulators in the US and globally, so we understand the rules and we're able to adopt it and really make it just like the traditional payment system is, but better because we know this is going faster, quicker, less friction, less fees.
I think I'll jump in here. I agree. I mean, as a company, we exclusively focus on retail investors, so I actually think that we already are seeing kind of that inflection point playing out. 50% of our customers are new investors, so there's a whole new generation of investors that are just coming on board. And I think the second thing is, without being patronizing, I think we have to figure out a way to get the next set of folks into the ecosystem. And part of it is education, not, again, like the word education is kind of like, it's not shoving them off to a side and like show them 100 pages to learn, but it's this in-context, bite-sized. For example, in like Robinhood, we have a newsletter called Snacks, and it's 40 million subscribers, probably one of the largest newsletters in the US. And it's this bite-sized, familiar content that the next generation of investors want to see, right? And it's already working. And the other obvious thing I'll state is cost, right? The cost of getting into crypto as an asset class in Bitcoin, fees are a big barrier. We found that on the equity side, clearly, once you say zero commission, a big barrier drops, right? And we have to continue to push on that as an industry.
Yeah. I think if I can jump in. So it's funny you mentioned inflection point. In fact, we have some exciting news to share at Celsius. That we've now crossed 150,000 in Bitcoin held. And just to put that in context, that's more than Voyager Digital, Galaxy Digital, Tesla, or a Coinbase combined. And it's in fact more than MicroStrategy as well in terms of number of Bitcoin held. And the reason this is a portion of that is certainly retail consumers coming in, but also institutional investors now seeing this as an asset class. This is one of those asset classes, Bitcoin in general, where 99.9% of the people saw and had access to this asset class and access to this coin before the private wealth management and institutions are now starting to jump in. And what we see at Celsius in terms of onboarding retail is three simple things. One is accessibility and simplicity in our product, in our marketing message. Two is financial literacy, so I completely agree with Aparna. And then the third piece is the ability and giving people the belief that they have access to wealth generation. In a lot of the cases, people are trying to time the market. People are trying to get into sort of let's buy low and sell high. this is more of a marathon, and allowing people to generate wealth through this through Bitcoin. That's one of the key reasons that we even exist.
And yeah, look, our perspective at Socure, at least the angle that we come at it from is around identity and how do you safely onboard consumers with the least amount of fraud possible. I've seen some folks here where it's taking a week, 2 weeks to open an account. That certainly is not a good consumer experience. And so a lot of what we're trying to solve is applying the most advanced predictive analytics to physical documents, to PII, to enable onboarding to occur in milliseconds or a couple of seconds. And so I think providing a friction-free process is a huge part of opening this to a larger number of consumers that don't want to be burdened by a multi-day process to open an account. I think that the second thing from our perspective is in utilizing machine learning, a lot of the way that identity has been done historically has been very bureau-based, where you have, just in the US population, like you have 35% of people that are credit invisible. And so you have an onerous process to prove who you are as a consumer, where we've spent a lot of work trying to figure out different types of Latin American names. How do you verify different types of genders as genders change, as addresses are structured in different ways? There's a huge analytical kind of challenge to be able to verify the largest number of people. And then I think the third to open it up is to make sure we're doing it safely. So we've spent the better part of the last decade building a variety of different machine learning models to be able to classify, is this Tom, is this not Tom, which will enable a better user experience to a larger number of consumer retailers trying to be onboarded.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good points all around. Thank you. You're all making it easy for me to sit here and shut up, like I promised. I'm sure the audience is appreciative as well. A couple of points on that, on this next onboarding push, right? I think that AI, ML, like you said, totally makes sense, streamline the process. I mean, if you're taking a week or 2 weeks to onboard a customer, that's like 2 years in Bitcoin terms, right? I mean, if Bitcoin is supposed to free you from the legacy banking system, that ain't it. So that's, it totally makes sense to turn to new technological solutions to do that. Apart from that, how do you onboard not only more people, right, and retain them? Because that's another tricky part. There's plenty of options in the market. There's tons of competition. So how do you get them in the door? How do you keep them there? And also, how are you looking to identify groups that have not traditionally been represented in Bitcoin before, right? And by that, I'm talking about, like, if you look at the stats, it's still, frankly, male-dominated, white male-dominated. It's been, big steps. I mean, looking around the crowd, the diversity is awesome. But in terms of marketing and you sort of like advertising and the resources, like you look at FTX and Coinbase, what they did in the Super Bowl was awesome. So how do you take all that to, bring on more people, reach as many people as possible, and fulfill sort of the central tenets of Bitcoin?
Yep.
Yeah, I think I'm going to say something a little bit spicy.
Good.
What the heck?
Spice is good.
I do think one, like there's the performative diversity aspect of it, and we should be careful to not artificially change the curve of early adopters and late adopters, right? When you think about an active trading product, there's naturally early adopters, and then there are folks who want to see a recurring buy or a passive product, or think about the asset class. They need much more of a hand-holding, et cetera. I think that curve, you need to preserve that. But at the same time, what we've observed in Robinhood is that if you drop the economic barriers, drop the experiential barriers, and drop the educational barriers, if you will, the emotional ones, suddenly you start to have that diversity be a organic, natural part of the platform. So 50% of customers being new investors, 1/3 of the investors are women on Robinhood. We have 8% African American, double the industry average. And so between these three things, right, low cost, zero commissions, great intuitive mobile experience that you don't have to go through a Rube Goldberg machine, and the fact that you can get 24/7 support, and the things that you're used to in a brokerage grade security. those are things that at least I've seen from my perspective really help naturally bring diversity.
Yeah, it's and all those points that Aparna made, we completely agree with them. The way we think about onboarding is threefold. The first one is, I don't think we look at ourselves. So our mission is to bring the next 100 million people into crypto and Bitcoin. And the way we think about that is not having necessarily a storefront with Celsius on the top. We could bring it through partners as well. So we have an enhanced partnership program, we have partnership APIs, and people coming through those programs, we still consider them as people that we help get to our mission. So that's number one. Number two is when we're trying to make our product, our marketing, very simple and accessible. So when we see people not going through our onboarding funnel, when people are stopping or when people are leaving us, we see that as a fail on our end. Not as, it was so simple, and like, why did you guys drop from the funnel? We see that as a fail on us as product managers, as marketing managers. So that's continuously iterative process, and we'll keep getting data, and we try to make it as simple as possible. For people to find information, for people to know where they are, people to onboard simply. And the third thing, we've gone one step further, which is we may be one of the few companies in crypto that actually has a call center, a fully staffed call center. And the reason we did that, though it was an expense item for us, is if we truly have this mission and we are in service to the mission of 100 million people, how can we ignore the people that probably require a human voice to guide them and handhold them, just even to sign up? Sometimes they have a problem when they're taking a loan, a crypto loan from us. They may need to talk to a person before they hit the approve loan button. And if we can open a center and have someone talk in person, then we're really not in service to our mission. Our mission is just a banner at the top. So those are the three things that we're doing to make it simpler and really diversifying it across age groups, gender, across international boundaries as well.
So for what it's worth, my mom loved the FTX commercial. She thought, she's a huge Larry David fan. And so she said, I love Larry David, but I don't know what FTX is. And so it actually opened a conversation with my mom about what is FTX, what do they do, what's crypto exchange. Like,
Well, Larry David didn't know what FTX was either, so good company.
that's true, but it spent the $30 million somewhere, hopefully on an exchange. Not relevant to what we do at all, but at all. But funny nevertheless. And so it was good to have the conversation with my mom. And so I think some of these ads are actually reaching a much more diversified audience. But what Socure does is kind of after the marketing occurs, we actually put together one of the top 3 banks in the U.S. with the Fed. We wrote a disparate impact analysis report, effectively showing that we could increase approval rates versus some of the legacy providers on 13 to 18-year-olds by over 60%. By 18-year-olds, we could actually verify over 65%. When we looked at like basically each different race, whether it was Black, Latina, Asian, like a couple of these kind of non-white races, we were able to verify like almost 80% more than a lot of the traditional providers were. And so as we looked at impact on particular classes, genders, ages. I think that's been the role that we've been able to play in trying to help open this community to a larger number of people.
I think something to add on there with Johnny there, because we work with Socure quite a bit. I think one thing Socure is doing that is phenomenal is they do onboarding, AML, KYC, Bank Secrecy Act, all that for the traditional banks, and they've learned where the friction points are, and they're making it more enhanced and even faster as we move into this new disruptive technology, and I think that's great. Then flipping to Prime Trust, where we're at, I think there's a couple things here that are really important. One is in Prime Trust, we just try to provide the rails for people to innovate. And what we want to do is make it so that they can easily integrate with our APIs. They can get the AML KYC checks that they need to know who their customers are. Right. And they get the rails to get fiat in and get the digital currencies moving. I think that's great because it allows anybody in there. It's not just, as we said, male, whites, stuff like that. It is, we have just an array of different ethnicities, everything coming in there, like the Black Wall Street, we're part of that with them, just different ideas that come in and go to these underbanked communities, and we make it so that you can get on our APIs quickly. I think that's phenomenal. But I think the other thing that's really important is we're starting to bring in areas like IRAs and wealth management, and that's really huge because that immediately gets these people who want in, have no idea how to get there, and say, oh, I can just take part of my IRA. And the IRAs and wealth management, I mean, that's the majority of the U.S. economy and economies across the world is some kind of retirement. If you can put your retirement in there and say, oh my gosh, this thing's outperforming, now I understand I'm in there, and now I've gotten proper AML KYC, which was similar to what I did at a bank. And as you go, you start to say, oh, this is much easier, and that brings millions and millions of users in who otherwise wouldn't be there.
I think that's a great point. I just think that it's also like us thinking as an industry beyond just active trading as an asset class. IRAs are a great example. We see recurring buys. Like people are used to the idea of dollar cost averaging on equities. We actually see that Bitcoin is like really high among people who are kind of just doing the recurring buys, stacking the sats, so to speak, even though they don't need to know the term, right? I think those are ways that you can make the unfamiliar familiar.
Yeah, agree.
Love the hot take, by the way. We're actually thinking bringing a bottle of whiskey on the stage, and then we heard it'd be a little too edgy, so keep it spicy where we can. In addition to, as you've all pointed out, dollar cost averaging, just buying Bitcoin, I think the retirement account is a great example, right? Because who wants a 60-40 blend that's going to do 6% a year and take like a 1.5 in terms of fees? I mean, if we live to like 130, you might be able to retire then, but otherwise, buy Bitcoin, right? What, in addition to just buying Bitcoin outright and DACing into it, what do you all see is the future of Bitcoin-linked products and how your firms might provide them, facilitate that? I mean, I'm thinking of a Bitcoin-based lending, right? I mean, why sell when you can just get a line of credit, keep it going up? Also on the credit side, I mean, we've got companies originating mortgages that are backed by Bitcoin now. I mean, the utilities are fascinating and allow people to totally bypass the traditional financial system. So what's next?
This is an important point, actually, that for people to get liquidity when they actually own some Bitcoin, the only path that people think they have toward liquidity is to sell their crypto and then buy something with it, right? So imagine, do you remember the time when Tesla had opened up Bitcoin-based Teslas? So if you bought a Model 3 at that point, when Bitcoin was, I think, 1/5 the price, now it's a $30,000, $40,000 vehicle. Now you're probably driving a $200,000 Model 3, right? If you bought it with Bitcoin. So the point there is, if instead, and Celsius has this as its product, you had just kept your collateral as Bitcoin and taken a loan, we offer loans at 1% APR, taken a loan on your collateral, you would have participated in the upside of Bitcoin, so your collateral would have gone up 5x, and you'd still be able to get your fiat loan in just US dollars at 1%, and then bought that Tesla or paid your student loans off. And I think a lot of people, again, comes down to Aparna and what I was saying is financial literacy, and again, we take this as like we failed in educating people instead of having them sell their Bitcoin to take a loan on it. So that's one of the products. The second product, again, to be able to spend in the fiat world is a credit card or a debit card. And the continuous innovation for us at Celsius is how do we find a way where in a credit card, it's still based on your fiat credit score, and a lot of the people have Bitcoin and that's their collateral. How do we bridge that gap and find ways where your collateral history, credit history of crypto, of Bitcoin, can translate into places where you can actually sell it. So we'll continue to innovate on products like that.
I have a slightly different take on it in terms of like at least the arc of evolution here. To me, the origin, at least the core part, where there's strong product market fit and there's a lot of energy around it, is Bitcoin as an asset class, as an investment, right? And there, in that core concentric circle, I think there's a whole lot of products to be built powered by Bitcoin. We talked about like retirement, recurring buys. There's a whole bunch of investment products, I would say. Yeah. And then there's like an outer concentric circle of Bitcoin powering other parts of your financial life, everyday financial life, that is spending, lending, potentially even earning. We launched a Robinhood Cash Card, and one of the things that in early research people found really exciting, and folks who had no exposure, by the way, to Bitcoin, saying, oh, I can now split my paycheck and put away some part of it towards Bitcoin. That felt differently qualitatively than me going and buying Bitcoin, even if it's the exact same amount. Or, oh, I buy a coffee and the spare change turns into crypto. That's different qualitatively. And so that's kind of like as much of a consumer psychology for the next 100 million, 200 million people.
Yeah. I love that, by the way. Just as a pure product guy, I love that innovation, because what it does is you've just taken that friction away from people, and they still feel that they have made a decision, but you've just made the product so seamless. So just as a pure product guy, I love that innovation, Aparna.
Yeah, we just put out a case study with one of our customers, Dibs.io, where they're basically doing fractional ownership on chain of any collectible. And so if you think about all the assets and all the like kind of pent up value that exists in, I don't know, Spider-Man comic book version 1, right? Or you know, a Babe Ruth, you know, home run signed ball, or a Michael Jordan rookie card. Like there's all these assets, right, with tremendous amount of wealth that are basically locked up because they're not on chain, they're not authenticated. There's not a way to basically fractional either sell it or lend against it or borrow against it. And so I think this opens up a much larger dollar value in terms of collectibles that I think is really interesting. And I think similarly to art, there's been a lot of projects related to fractional ownership of like large pieces of art, including you know, a DAO that tried to buy the Constitution. You know, I think that there's all these like really interesting asset classes that I think are going to continue to evolve.
What I think is actually really cool is looking at El Salvador and knowing that they're on Bitcoin. I mean, with the global unrest kind of happening today, and knowing that, you know, Ecuador is on the U.S. dollar, and there's different things like that. But like to get a, you know, Bitcoin that is actually a government is actually using and saying, wow, this is awesome, because this is something that governments can't control, and this can actually change the world. You talk about, you know, countries that just, the inflation is so high, suddenly having an asset that they can predict a little bit better. And you know, when there is war going on and issues like this, I mean, that to me is one of the most exciting things, because it's like, wow, we're really changing the world. Like everybody here, we're changing the world. We're making it so people who never had a chance, like they could walk to the store and the value of the cash in hand is not enough to buy milk by the time they get there. And now all of a sudden with Bitcoin, it's like, wow, I can actually predict this. I can actually trade. I can make this stuff happen. I think that's just amazing.
Like, to that point, if I can just add, so when it becomes really personal for me, so a good portion of my team sits in Serbia, and the product and engineering team, and we in the US sometimes just forget how easy it is for us to, you know, open a Robinhood account and, you know, buy equity, like buy an Apple stock, buy a Tesla stock. It's not as simple in those areas. And there's only, this is my team coming back to me and said, you know, Tushar, did you know how hard it is for us to get this? Either you have to get a certificate that tells you you're able to trade equity, or you have to be, in Serbian translation, of noble birth to be able to trade. And so the first time that people have been able to participate in an asset class is Bitcoin. Literally the first thing that they've been able to do, other than like getting a group of friends and flipping real estate, the only way that they've been able to participate in wealth generation is buying their first Bitcoin. And so every time I wake up and I'm looking at like the mission of the company, it's truly personal to me that I have a large team sitting there and actually participating in this wealth generation through Bitcoin.
It's awesome.
Absolutely. So we've got about a minute left. So let's end this on a rosy note. I mean, I have an incredible little high conviction in everyone on this panel, everyone in this room, and this amazing Bitcoin community, right? But I think it's also important to think about why this might not work, and able to ensure that it does work, right? So just real quick, what's the single biggest potential point of failure for you all, and how do you overcome that?
I'll start. I think the biggest one is that we don't keep doing this. We got to keep innovating. So we got to make sure that the rails are here. We got to get the ideas out there, and we got to capitalize them and try them. Just keep doing it. Keep innovating.
I think leaning into compliance and meeting regulatory requirements, or helping shape regulatory requirements, is a huge piece. Really excited about our partnership with Prime Trust, with kind of compliance as a service that enables folks to kind of meet best practices from a lot of other traditional financial services industries. I think that's a key to long-term success.
I think as a recovering computer scientist, I think the scaling is one of the core puzzles to crack. We cracked that and we are on our way.
Yeah. For me, it'll be simplicity. That's how we started this conversation. So anything that we can take to take the friction away, that's how it's going to be accessible, and we are able to scale it. So simplicity in product, in our marketing message, and our ability to reach customers and people.
Thank you all so much. Super smart, super insightful. Thank you to everyone in this room for hearing us out. My mom always said, repeat a joke 3 times, so I hope I did actually shut up and let them talk. Quickly, thank you so much to David Bailey and BTC. I thought last year was fun. This year is amazing. Drink your Pedialyte tonight, have fun, pop an Advil or 3 tomorrow morning, and we'll see you here. Let's keep it going. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Welcome back. We're here at the Marathon News Desk at Bitcoin 2022 Industry Day, presented by Bitcoin Magazine. I'm Pete Rizzo, again, editor at Bitcoin Magazine, and I'm joined by returning special guests, Mark Moss, author of the Uncommunist Manifesto, Q Kahimi, host of Bitcoin Magazine Live, and a new special guest all the way to the left, Zuby, rapper and author of Jackson 8. First, if you're watching at home, like, subscribe, smash. Next, we just finished watching Onboarding Retail. Bringing millions of users to crypto was the subject. But as we noted backstage, stressing verification, regulation, and the quote, leaning into requirements. Mark, I know when you heard that, you reacted. Why don't you tell the people at home what you thought?
Yeah, a couple things that I think about that. So first of all, I would say is that we don't need to bring everybody in. Everybody will come in at the point they deserve, right? We say in Bitcoin, they'll buy at the price they deserve. And so we are motivated by pain and pleasure. So crypto brought a lot of people rushing for pleasure, trying to chase the price up. But around the world, we have massive pain. And that pain is driving people towards Bitcoin. So places like Lebanon, Argentina, Venezuela, where inflation is going 800%, 2,500%, massive pain. And so they'll come. I don't think we need to force people in because there's not necessarily a need. But the big problem that we have is that innovation is here to change things. We have the technology to change things. The thing that's holding back innovation is regulation. And so even Christine Lagarde from the IMF, she said, quote, I'll quote her, she said that innovation is a threat to our financial stability. No, not stability, their financial monopoly. So it's the regulations that hold this back. Otherwise, man, we'd be changing the world.
Q, ID verification, regulation, when you hear that stuff, what's going through your head as a Bitcoiner? How are you processing that?
I mean, look, it's antithetical to what Bitcoin was founded upon. It was meant to be a response to the 2008 financial crisis, a response to the money printing and the excess power control that's concentrated amongst a few hands, and then to create regulations that will essentially give those few hands access to our information, access to what we are doing, when that is exactly what we don't want. We want the freedom to be able to spend our money how we want. We want the freedom to be able to do what we want with our money. And we want the freedom to not have our money devalued or debased in any way. Not saying that regulation will allow them to debase the money. At the same time, though, regulation will inhibit our abilities to grow the network at the rate and pace at which we would like.
Right.
Zuby, coming to Bitcoin, maybe a bit newer than some of the other folks. When you hear regulation, what's your reaction?
Well, I think you said it perfectly. It's antithetical to what Bitcoin is supposed to be.
Right.
And if not before, after the last couple of years, people should certainly understand the concept of creep, right? Scope creep, concept creep, exactly. The slow totalitarian tiptoe, oh, we just need to regulate this, and then that, and then that. You know, you give people an inch, they take a mile, and this goes for sure when you are talking about governments, when you're talking about central banking, when you're talking about these type of fiscal policies. It's something that always leans towards more and more control. And I believe that Bitcoin is about liberty. That's the whole point of the entire disruption. So I think we need to be cautious that in this space, it doesn't just end up over time becoming something like the old legacy system.
Let's stick with there. Love it. Bitcoin culture is a tool for freedom, something we talked about, not discussed on the panel, but Mark, know you're passionate about it. What is it that makes people who are interested in Bitcoin more interested in freedom? What's the relationship there?
Yeah, so for me, I think we were discussing this, so I'll leave some of it for others to talk about. But I think one of the big things that I see is it changes your time preference. And we're in this culture today where instant gratification of everything. I need to get rich overnight. Like 6% in the stock market the last 80 years, but now people need to make 200% or they're not happy. So this instant gratification, the problem is nothing good in life comes easy or quick. And so Bitcoin changes your time preference. You start thinking longer term. And when you think longer term, you want to invest longer term into your relationships, into your health, into your body and all these things. And so I think just that shift changes things in a big way, but I know there's more.
Bitcoin culture, Zuby, Q.
I'll go, and I won't steal too much from what I know Zuby's going to talk about, but for me, it really goes back down to what is your priority? What are the things that you prioritize in life? And that's how you creep in and you find ways that Bitcoin solves it. We joke a lot in Bitcoin that Bitcoin fixes this, Bitcoin fixes that, but the truth is it really does solve a lot of our problems. And what your priority is, what you care about most is how you start to creep in and slowly learn. And beyond that, it's on you to learn more and deeper.
Zuby, we were talking about the connection between Bitcoin and other industries, broader skepticism, your take.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think once people start questioning one system, they start to question the entire thing. They start to question conventional wisdom, things they were taught in school, things that are coming from corporate media, and so on. And I think it's always good to ask questions and to go beyond that and to seek solutions. Excellent.
Well, we've got more great Bitcoin 2022 Industry Day content coming up. Next is onboarding institutions, another panel that I think we can expect our board here to have something to say about.
Yeah.
Appreciate you liking and subscribing on YouTube. If you've got some time, bitcoinmagazine.com/store. Check out the new Bitcoin Magazine Moon Edition. That's on sale right now. We'll be back for more of this after the break.